Ladies and gentlemen, it's Friday morning. We got a great podcast. I got college football experts Zach Barnett, John Bryce, the reigning Football Scoop Man of the Year, the pending Football Scoop Man of the Year. Enormous week in college football. We've got 10 amazing football games. Zach Barnett as the pending Football Scoop Man of the Year. I'm going to let you start us off. I'm going to strongly recommend maybe we start in Columbus, Ohio. But Zach, what game would you like to talk about first?
Yeah, I think it's definitely Indiana, Ohio State. So much of the conversation has centered around this game in this sport, and so much of it has been around Indiana as a concept and very little about this actual football game that's going to happen that I can't wait to devour every second of. And because I feel like we're opening a giant mystery box. This Indiana team, in a lot of ways, is unlike anything we've seen before. It's kind of like I don't mean to be pejorative in any way, but it's like if you formed a group of 5 all-star team and then put them in the Big Ten, how would they do? And they've absolutely dominated, for the most part, everyone they've played, but they have not played a team anywhere close to the caliber of Ohio State. So I would believe just about any single outcome of this game. Having said that, I think Indiana can hang with this game, and I think there's a shot for Indiana to win this game. It certainly helps that Ohio State's offensive line is banged up and not what they thought it was going to be. But I think for Indiana to hang in this game and to win this game, I think Curtis Rourke has to be the best player on the field on either team. And I think he's got to be the best player on the field kind of by head and shoulders. I think this is a game where you have a ultra veteran quarterback and say, we need you to go be the dude and carry us in this game and fit the ball into these tight windows that you haven't seen so far, pick up first downs on the ground. Like, you've got to go be that guy for Indiana to have a chance.
If Ohio State's good enough to spot Penn State a 10-0 lead on the road in that stadium and then win it really with comfort and lead for the final 42 minutes of the game, Ohio State is plenty good enough to handle Indiana at home. Now, this game will probably be close for a quarter, maybe the first half, but then I just think the superiority of Ohio State will take over across the duration of the game. Also, I'm told that Ohio State is expecting quite a number of incredibly high-profile recruits to be at the game this weekend. So they're going to want to make sure that they're putting their best foot forward for the present tense and for the future tense. And I just think that as good as Indiana has been this year, and you make a great point, Zach, that they're almost like an island of misfit toys, but they've come together and played incredibly well. But Ohio State is littered with NFL dudes on both sides of the ball, and I know the O-line is dinged up a little bit, but guess what? It was dinged up going into that Penn State game, and they had a guy playing left tackle who'd never played left tackle before, and all they did was march from the shadow of their own goal line at the 1-yard line and eat the final 5 minutes and 37 seconds off the clock in Penn State's house. If they could do that with a revamped line, they'll be able to do that against Indiana. I think Ohio State wins. The spread, I just checked it, is right at 10.5. I think probably Ohio State wins in the 31-17 range.
Yeah, you guys know I'm big on the mental aspect of this game, and I think you bring up a great point, John. If you sign with Ohio State, you expect to play in games like this multiple times per season. Obviously, you don't expect to play them against Indiana, but a top 5 showdown at noon on national TV in late November, we're playing Michigan, and it's a big game. Like, this is Ohio State's 3rd showdown game of this season. And Indiana, you sign with Indiana dreaming of one day hopefully playing in a game like this. Kurt Cignetti has hit every right note so far this season. I'm sure he'll have Indiana ready to play, but when the game starts and you're lined up across the line of scrimmage from guys that are going to be making hundreds of millions of dollars in the NFL, that's something you can't possibly replicate in practice. It's something you can't, prepare for until you have to go do it. And the quality of Ohio State's athletes over a 60-minute game is something Indiana has not had to do before. And John, your score prediction is interesting to me because the conversation around this game is, well, if Indiana wins, they're in. If they get blown out, then they don't deserve to be in there. But if it's close, then we have a debate on our hands. So if it ends up being 31-17, I'm going to be interested to see what the discourse around this game is. Is it close enough? Is it 31-10 and then Indiana scores late, or is it close and then Ohio State pulls away in the fourth quarter? There's going to be a moment in this game, assuming Ohio State wins, when the discourse kicks into high gear of, okay, well, now we know exactly what Indiana is and where they deserve to be. And I find that all nauseating, but I'm also looking forward to watching it happen as it plays out in real time.
Yeah, this is the weekend where the CFP discussions are tangentially impacted in so many different games, and they're going to bubble to the forefront. And this is one of the games, and certainly the next game I think we're about to talk to is heavy in the CFP discussion. Minnesota Penn State. I don't know that PJ Flex ever had as many people rooting for him as what he will have for the Golden Gophers this weekend.
I don't know if y'all can see it, but the grin on my face is ear to ear because all I can think about is Kirk Cignetti Friday night showing his guys Hoosiers. And he might even hold it till Saturday early morning. And he's showing them Hoosiers and he's measuring from that free throw line, still 15 feet. And he's going, boys, Jimmy Chitwood. Come on, boys. Let's go win this one. Gene Hackman has got his guys ready to go. Kurt Cignetti's got his guys ready to go. And those little kids from Hickory, they're gonna pull this one off. I'm on the Hoosiers. Y'all know I vote with my heart. You guys vote with the analytics and your smarts and your brains. And you guys are college football experts for a reason. You guys have won the picks several years. I'm just telling you, all heart, baby. Give me Hickory. Give me the Hoosiers.
Love it.
Yes.
Don't change, Scott.
Yes.
It would be.
I'm here for all this.
If we're going to talk about the CFP ramifications of what if Indiana plays them close, what if Indiana does win? What does that do to Ohio State? That puts Ohio State, a 2-loss team, no path to the Big Ten championship game. Is Ohio State in the field at that point in time? Or is the Big Ten suddenly down to 3 teams making – and Penn State sitting there with an easier schedule potentially with one loss, that one loss being to Ohio State, but Ohio State being on the outside looking in. I think these are, these are the fascinating subplots off the field this weekend that will determine a lot on the field next month.
Zach, are you old enough to know what Hoosiers is?
Yes, I've seen Hoosiers many times.
All right. It's going to be a great game. I'm very excited about that one. I'm also a big pro-America guy. I love Army, Notre Dame, Yankee Stadium, Saturday night. Going to be cold. John Bryce, you're going to be there. Set me up for this one.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's the 100-year anniversary of Notre Dame's first ever consensus national championship in 1924. It is the 100th anniversary. And I need to make sure I get this correct because I had it wrong in my story initially yesterday, but it's the 100-year anniversary also of the Four Horsemen game as chronicled by Grantland Rice that took place in the Polo Grounds. And this is the 4th time, I think, in just modern era, the last 15 or so years that Notre Dame has played a football game in Yankee Stadium. All time, I think Notre Dame has played more than 20 games in New York and either in some iteration of Yankee Stadium from the Polo Grounds to the present Yankee Stadium. So there's tons of history as the backdrop. They've lit up the Empire State Building green starting Thursday evening. The Notre Dame band is going to be performing in Times Square on Saturday before the game. Notre Dame's branding takeover of Times Square is pretty impressive. And it's no small feat to be able to brand yourself in Times Square. I was dialed into Jeff Monken's press conference on Tuesday. He's very candid. I wrote about it. He had the great line. They've got 22 parade All-Americans. We've got 22 guys who have marched in parades. He made it clear and did not shy away from the fact that he believes Notre Dame is the absolute physical superiority in every component of this contest. He went on to say that he thinks this might be the best overall team he's faced in his 11 years as head coach at Army. And he noted that he's played against Oklahoma. He's played Michigan. He's played some other Power 5 teams, LSU even a year ago. And he said he thinks this is the most complete team he will have played. You know, that team last year got blown out at LSU. The other two, Oklahoma and Michigan, ended up being overtime wins for the home team. And really, they should have beaten Michigan in that game in Ann Arbor around the start of the 2018 season. So this is a program that is going to play the underdog. He said, we just show up and go play where they tell us. We're kind of like our Army troops in that regard. We just get and go show up and try our best to do our job. So if Army can control the ball offensively the way like it did against North Texas, Army had the ball for almost 42 minutes a couple of weeks ago against North Texas and limited North Texas to only 6 possessions total in the game. Notre Dame had 9 possessions in the first half alone last week against Virginia. Or the week before against Florida State. But Notre Dame, one of its past 2 games, had 9 possessions and a half. So if Army gets the ball first and lays on that Notre Dame defense and has a 9.5-minute drive, even if it results in just a field goal, then I think you start to see Notre Dame. The way that Notre Dame responds will be very curious to me, because is there a little bit of a panic there because 10 minutes of the game have gone by and Notre Dame's not touched the ball? So possessions are at a premium. Army can't afford to get down by double digits, but then Notre Dame really can't either because of the nature of the offense.
Having watched Notre Dame for the last 6-8 weeks, I'm not sure there's a team playing better than they are. I think Notre Dame is, I talk about it all the time. I love going with heart, and I wish Army was going to win this game because I think Army is such a special story this season. I love Bryson Daly, but man, I think Notre Dame wins this game going away, to be honest. Just mine.
It's hard to shake. Obviously, Army's better than Navy, but it's hard to shake the way Notre Dame just completely dismantled Navy.
Yep.
To think that these teams are comparable to each other, to think that Notre Dame's going to completely dismantle Navy and then turn around and lose to Army is hard to shake. John, I'm curious. So you bring up a great point earlier about if Army takes 10 minutes off the clock to open the game. I don't know Marcus Freeman's philosophy on this, but do you think if Notre Dame wins the coin toss, they accept the football just to try and go out and score and tilt the field in their favor?
No, he is huge on having the ball to open the second half. He thinks it steals an extra possession for his team in the second half. He places a strong emphasis on trying to get the ball back at any way possible the final 4 minutes of the first half, and then knows that he wants to open the second half with the football. So if Notre Dame wins the toss, I'm convinced that Notre Dame will defer, as it almost always has under Marcus Freeman, and kick the ball off to start the game. And one thing about Navy, I thought it was interesting. Newberry acknowledged after that game the moment was too big for us, and it was a windy day that day in the Meadowlands. But Navy had 6 turnovers. I don't think there's any way that Army will have 6 turnovers tomorrow, which is why I think this game is closer through the duration. But I do think that Notre Dame pulls away across the second half.
The proof that this is God's favorite sport is that we don't get Army Notre Dame games every year. They haven't played since 2016, but the fact that we get it when Army's the best they've been since 1996, and we get this Notre Dame's really good, and we get this game in late November at Yankee Stadium, it's just picture perfect. Can't write
at night under the lights,
yeah, in hot time, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Epic. All right, tell me, did Army ever disclose what had happened to Daly?
No.
No. Good.
No.
He looked okay last week. Didn't look amazing. Looked okay.
Yeah.
I love the kid. Kid's amazing. I think he's a future, United States president, maybe.
Yeah.
But tough game here.
I'll tell you what probably happened to him is I think the week before that he ran the ball 36 times. So there's probably just beat all to hell. And this is to further my point, and then we can move to the next set of games is I did the math yesterday. I know math is not my strong suit, but Army averages 54 rushing attempts per game. 54.
Jeez.
54 rushing attempts. Bryson Daly, I think, averages 22 rushing attempts per game by himself.
You're going to be you brought North Texas earlier. Getting tackled by that Notre Dame front is going to be quite a bit different than North Texas.
Touche.
Plethora of really good games. Probably not going to go Georgia, UMass. Probably won't go Tennessee, UTEP. But we are contractually obligated to stay in the SEC early in this podcast. So Alabama, Oklahoma, Florida, or Ole Miss, Florida. I mean, talk to me about these two.
Yeah, I think there's 2 really interesting games in the SEC this weekend. And these are top 12 teams going, or top 15 teams going on the road to very losable games. Alabama at Oklahoma is not one of them.
No.
But Ole Miss at Florida, Ole Miss is gathering steam as a potential national champion. Not only this team can make the playoffs, but this team can win the national championship. And they're going to a Florida team that's improving by the week, the Texas game notwithstanding. But this team is if the ball had bounced differently for this Florida team, they'd be in the top 25 right now. And now you have Ole Miss going on the road for them, and then A&M at Auburn. And this is ultimate trap game. And I'm sure you guys saw the Mike Elko slip when someone was asked about, are you looking ahead to Texas? He said, absolutely not. Our minds are fully on Texas.
Right.
So A&M is a 2.5-point favorite on the road at night against an Auburn team that, again, if the ball bounced differently, if they coached a little better, this would be a 6-3 team and not a 3-6 team or whatever their record is. I kind of wonder in A&M's instance if it's, don't protest too much type game where everyone's talking about, hey, A&M's a sneaky upset pick. A&M's on upset alert. If there's the talk's gotten too loud and A&M's now focus their full attention on this Auburn game, whereas if everyone hadn't talked about it, then maybe there would be that. Or maybe I'm just thinking too much. Auburn's played much better than their record has shown, and A&M's a good team, but not a great team. So I think there's great potential for either Ole Miss or A&M to lose, but I don't know which one it is.
Yeah, those three games to me, including Alabama at Oklahoma, are compelling to various degrees. I think probably Alabama is the team that I feel most comfortable will completely take care of business this weekend. Now, DJ Lagway played well last week. I think Florida has shown a lot of competitive character and probably been validating to Billy Napier's culture with the way that they have consistently competed. Look, the Texas game got away from them. They've been through a lot. They didn't have Lagway. There've been so many emotions that was more an aberration of what we've seen out of Florida after this season got really thick in its first 2 to 3 weeks of the year, and they got down early, and there were all those rumors swirling, and then they've just sort of found a way to stand in there and fight week after week, even as Graham Mertz has his collegiate career ended, and then Lagway looked like he would be lost for the year, and you're going to a walk-on from Yale, and they still took Georgia down to the wire. So I know in talking to people this week that Ole Miss has some concerns about Lagway's ability to extend plays, what he can do kind of off schedule, off platform, and still make some throws. So it's a game where Ole Miss needs a really fast start to take away or try to take away Florida's spirit and belief that it can upset the Rebels in this game. Because it's still, as Lane Kiffin said, it's an elimination game for them. Their hopes and dreams are over if they suffer one more loss in the regular season. Similarly, it's the same thing for Texas A&M. But I think I've got A&M on upset alert under the lights on the Plains Saturday night in Auburn. Auburn, as you've noted, Zach, should have coached better across the course of this season. They should have won at Missouri for sure. There have been other games in there they could have won. If you don't want to say should have, there were certainly other games they could have won. And offensively, they've got some strong numbers. They've just turned it over too much and not been efficient enough in the red zone. Yeah,
the key to the A&M Auburn game for me is Auburn able to run the football. In every game, Alabama, A&M notwithstanding, every game Auburn's won, they've been over 200 rushing yards. Every game they've lost, they've been under 200 and most often well below it. They're in that 140 range. So if Auburn's able to run the ball consistently and get to 180 to 200 yards, that range, then Auburn has a great chance to win. If they're not, then A&M's going to win. If Auburn can run the ball, that's going to determine this game.
And Mike Elko has proved the depth and Mike Elko and Colin Klein have proved the depth at knowing whether to go with Marcel Reed or Connor Wigman. But at some point, you think that becomes a bugaboo, and it might be if you have to turn from one to the other under the lights on a road game, where I still think that the fans have pretty strongly supported this Auburn team despite all their overall disappointment.
Yeah, John, you're a great baseball guy. Every once in a while, you go to the bullpen and you bring in your closer, and the guy just doesn't have it. Eventually, Mike Elko is going to bring one of those guys in, and he's not going to have it, and then he'll have potentially a mess on his hands, but that hasn't happened yet.
And if you're Brian Snicker, the Braves manager, you make the wrong call to the bullpen far too often.
More than once. I think Pete Golding has done a really good job with Ole Miss's front, and he doesn't have to bring 7 guys to get home. He brings 4, sometimes 5, and he gets home a lot. And I think that presents problems for Lagway. I think Ole Miss wins that game pretty handily. Big 12. So BYU, Arizona State, but also Kansas, Colorado Kansas is playing real well. And is that, I don't know. You guys ain't got any thoughts on those 2 games?
Yeah, the Kansas-Colorado game is a compelling matchup for sure. It's going to be played in the house formerly known as Arrowhead Stadium or Gayha Field at Arrowhead Stadium, whatever it is now. That's an exciting matchup. I haven't looked at the over. I know the line is super close. It might just be the Buffs favored by like 2.5, but I'm taking the over. I think this will be a pretty high-scoring game, and I think that Colorado will have to sort of outshoot the Jayhawks to win this contest.
Yeah, I completely agree. The Colorado defense has been the story of this Big 12 season in a lot of ways, but I think both teams are going to get into the 30s in this game, and this is going to be one of those classic whoever has the ball last wins the game type games. And I think Colorado. I'm going to take Colorado, but confidence levels at like a 1.
And to your point, Scott, a great one. Ole Miss line being able to get home on BJ Lagway with mainly just their front 4. Colorado leads the Big 12 in sacks and is up there in the top 10 nationally, I believe, still with what it's been able to do. And they're not running a lot of exotic blitzes. They're utilizing their front 4 and bringing some backers as they need to. So I do think the defensive line in this game ultimately gives Colorado the edge to win the shootout.
How about BYU, Arizona State?
Yeah, I think the Cougars are in massive trouble. If this is an Arizona State team good enough to go and handle K-State the way it did last week, and I think Doug might have been the only one to get that pick correctly, then at home they're plenty good enough, and they're a little more explosive consistently offensively than what the Cougars are. So I think that that loss last week to Kansas so damaging to BYU, and I think this will end their dream season this weekend there in the Valley of the Sun.
Wow. Okay. All right. Let's shift. California, former Pac-12. USC UCLA is a football game. Somebody should win, hopefully, maybe. Got any quick thoughts on that one?
USC should win this game. And USC is in more trouble if they don't win this game than UCLA. The USC Nebraska game was fascinating to me because both of those teams tossed victory back and forth like a hot potato, and USC ended up winning that game. And now you have the opportunity to continue to build on that and not allow this season to devolve into a flaming wreck. UCLA's already, I think, had a generally online season of what we expected. I think more pressure's on USC. I think USC is a better team. USC should win this game, and it's going to get on. Not to suggest Lincoln jobs in any way, but I think it's just going to be miserable for USC if they can't beat their crosstown rival when UCLA's down as they are.
Yeah, and USC, of course, has Notre Dame looming at home next week, so there'll be extra eyeballs on it because of that, because USC's, again, already had a couple of players opt out over the course of this season. They've lost all these close games. They nearly manufactured a way to lose last week to Nebraska after taking the lead with a minute 40 and then watching the Huskers march all the way downfield with a chance to tie the contest and got one final stop, or Nebraska stopped itself, and so they got their 5th win at long last. They're now 13-12 in their last 25 games under Lincoln Riley. UCLA has impressed me. They've played a little bit better over the back half of the season, and I had this pointed out to me this week after USC spent a lot of money to go get DeAnton Lynn from UCLA and become its defensive coordinator. UCLA's defense this year is actually rated, 15 or 18 spots higher than USC's defense. So UCLA is playing some good defense. They can run the ball moderately well. It all boils down to Ethan Garbers. If he doesn't turn it over, then I think UCLA absolutely has a shot to upset the Trojans in the Rose Bowl.
The problem is he does turn it over a bunch. It's like, come on. Yeah. Yeah, I like SC in that one just by a little bit. I was going to stay out west, but you mentioned teams that just struggled to win. So it brings me to Nebraska and Wisconsin. How's that one play out?
At Nebraska, I think the Huskers finally get over the hump and get bowl eligibility. You know, even though it's not portal season, it is portal season. The rumors are already starting to circulate out there about which college quarterbacks might be playing somewhere else next year. Nebraska needs a win in the worst way for all the on the field and off the field reasons. As we know, they've not been in a bowl for 8 years. So I think that at home, Nebraska will find a way. We've seen Luke Fickell sort of hitting the parachute button and getting rid of Phil Longo and being prepared to move in a different direction, because much like Matt Rule, then next year is going to be a referendum year for both Matt Rule and Luke Fickell at Nebraska and Wisconsin, respectively. I would pick the home team in this game, and I'm picking Nebraska strictly because you think at some point Nebraska has to get over the hump and get back to a bowl game.
I feel the same way.
I think the numbers, Nebraska's lost 9 straight games when playing for bowl eligibility. And I'll say this: if Nebraska doesn't win this week, there's no way they're beating Iowa. There's just no way. This is a lot of ways their season, in my mind. They are at home. They're catching Wisconsin at what we think is a good time. Obviously, Wisconsin put a lot into that Oregon game. You have to wonder where they are emotionally after losing that game, and then obviously moving on from Phil Longo. Nebraska, they've got to win at some point. They've got to get to mediocrity at some point. So, yeah, I agree with John. This is their chance. If they don't do it now, then they're going to lose at Iowa 100%.
I'll share this with you. I did Fox Sports Midwest earlier this week, and it originates out of the Dakotas, but has a ton of Nebraska fans and following there. And they had done a poll before I came on air saying if Nebraska doesn't make a bowl, is Matt Rule fully on the hot seat in 2025? And I answered, yeah, I would think he would absolutely. Again, it would be a referendum year for Matt Rule. 71, I don't know the number of respondents to the poll. 71% of the respondents to that poll said Nebraska would not have Matt Rule fully on the hot seat in 2025 because they said, we can't keep doing this. We can't keep changing coaches every 3 or 4 years. Well, I think Scott Frost got 5 years. And certainly Mike Riley got a handful of years as well. But I don't see any way that Matt Rule, that poll doesn't change if they're asked in 2 weeks and Nebraska, again, is not going to a bowl.
Yeah, Nebraska is a very friendly market. If Nebraska was in the SEC, Matt Rule would be getting barbecued. But up there, they're just like, oh, well, we'll try next week. Like that media up there coddles Matt Rule compared to a lot of other markets.
Agreed. Now his AD didn't hire him. I'm with John on this. If they don't make a bowl, next year is a enormous year for his tenure.
Unless we prove there's some sort of curse over Nebraska football that keeps them at 5 wins in perpetuity, then it's hard to blame Matt Rule. But all we're asking is just to be average, and they've proven that is the most difficult mountain. They're trying to climb Everest with flippers on.
What has been the corn production in that state the last few years? I'm not aware of it being disastrous. If there was, I would believe in a curse. But the corn's still growing fine, as far as I know. There's no curse.
Quality point, John.
I go back to that Illinois game in September, that Friday night game when Dylan Raiola has a 3rd and 10 touchdown that he just throws 2 inches too far. They hit that. Nebraska probably has 8 wins right now. I 100% believe that.
I wouldn't be. Yeah,
I don't.
I don't think they would have lost. I don't think they would have lost to UCLA if they'd won that game. So I agree with that point, ZB. They'd probably already be a 6 or 7 win team. So, but they do. They have transcended coaches, but still found a way to manufacture losses. Mm-hmm. They grow losses like they grow corn.
All right, so we're right at the 30-minute Mark, I'm going to issue a challenge, which I'm not sure either of you guys can handle. I'm going to ask you guys to provide no commentary, just simply the name of the Heisman Trophy winner, whose name is Ashton Genty. But I'm going to ask you guys to tell me just the name.
Travis Hunter.
Travis Hunter. If I have to pick today, I broke the challenge. I'm sorry.
I can't believe JB held out. I'm impressed. Genty wins. All right. Any last games you guys want to talk about real fast?
I mean, we didn't talk about Minnesota Penn State, but it's a
Okay.
huge game. No, we just mentioned it, and I said never would PJ Fleck had more people rowing the boat with him saying Sikuma or whatever than this weekend in Minnesota. Like, there are a number of PJ Fleck stands this weekend hoping to expose what I think is college football's by far most hollow one-loss team. One of the most hollow team in the top 12 rankings by far, in my opinion, is Penn State, and I don't think it's very close. I was trying to look to see which FCS games I was compelled by this weekend. Zach, if you have a game you want to talk about.
Duquesne, Central Connecticut.
Zach's got a whole write-up on this.
Yeah, they will decide the NEC title on the field this weekend. If you want stakes in your football, that's the one to watch this weekend. It's on. I'm sure it's streaming on the internet somewhere. I have no idea. Google it. But Duquesne, Central Connecticut. That for all the marbles.
I'm stupid. I've known what game is this week, and I need to show you the backdrop or the setting for it as early this week as Monday or Tuesday, and that is the Brawl of the Wild out in Montana versus Montana State. I'm just going to cover my screen with this. This was the local TV shot on Monday or Tuesday afternoon for the lead-in on the game. Well, I guess it's not going to – yeah, it's not going to show. There you go. You can see.
There we go.
Look at that. Just already massive snow-covered field. So that's a huge game. Montana State 11-0. The Bobcats rolling. Montana 8-3. Probably needs this win to feel really good about making the playoffs. Game in Bozeman. Jess and I love Bozeman, but we like both programs. But that's at the FCS level. That rivalry is as good and as real as it gets anywhere in college football.
There are 30 other games that have massive implications. You got to win this weekend for next weekend's to get you to the conference championship. This is just a huge weekend. It's going to be great. I think I'll watch more football Saturday than I will have in many other days. Gentlemen, let's go make it great. John Bryce, enjoy Notre Dame Army in Yankee Stadium. Zach, your championship locally, I'm sure. All's well?
Yeah.
We're out of here. Everybody have a great day.